international news story. In terms of popularity, within 2 weeks of the first batch of material being released in May 2008, within 2 weeks, 2 million people had gone onto the National Archives website and downloaded this material. There was also some criticism because the National Archives said that for the first month the material will be free, but after that you have to pay a little fee. Even government has to try and raise money any way it can in these difficult economic times. So selling the UFO files is a good idea, maybe. So let me pick out perhaps some cases, some of which you may well have heard about, some may be rather more new. One of the most interesting cases that emerged from these files was a case that involved a United States Air Force pilot called Milton Torres. In 1957, Milton Torres was on an exchange program, and he was based in the United Kingdom. One day, the radar controllers detected an uncorrelated target in British airspace, and Milton Torres, who was flying an F-86 Sabre interceptor, he and one other pilot were scrambled to intercept this UFO that was being tracked on radar. He was vectored towards this by the radar operators, and then he himself detected the object on his airborne radar. And he said it was so big, he didn't even need the people on the ground to help vector him towards the target. But then he received an order which to this day haunts him, because over the radio came the instruction to him, shoot down the UFO. And he had heard this correctly, but it was such a surprising order that he asked for reconfirmation. He said, say again, confirm, and the reply came back, shoot down the UFO. Now, the F-86 Sabre was armed with 24 air-to-air rockets. He approached the object, which, by the way, he never saw. He never got close enough to see this visually, but it was big enough and powerful enough for him to have no doubt where it was because of what he was seeing on the airborne radar. This thing was just hovering or traveling very, very slowly. And just before he got to a position where he would have been in range to fire, suddenly on his radar screen, he saw the object begin to increase its speed until suddenly it accelerated away at, he said, around Mach 10. So he never fired his rockets, which is probably a good thing. Not least because this was over the mainland UK. So it is a very strange and controversial order in itself, which raises a lot of questions. When he landed, he was told that his mission had been classified and he was not to discuss it. And it was only when a report that he lodged with a lawyer emerged from the Ministry of Defence's own files that he felt that he had been released from his secrecy oath, because he said, look, even though no one has rescinded the order that I must not talk about it, the Ministry of Defense have now released my account. They must be And you can see some YouTube videos from a few news stories on CNN, Fox News, of Milton Torres telling his story. And still, when he discusses this, he gets quite emotional. And one of the reasons he gets so emotional is that he's carried this account for decades without having discussed it. And he couldn't even tell his own father. And his father sadly passed away a few years ago, before the Ministry of Defense released his files. So he was very upset because he said, I could never tell my father, and my father would have loved to have heard about this, but he never had that opportunity. That case, by the way, is not the only case where pilots have been ordered to shoot at a UFO. There was a case from Iran in 1976 involving a pilot called Parviz Jafari. He was ordered to shoot at a UFO in restricted airspace. His missile system did not operate, so again, he was not able to open fire. A case, I think, apologies if it's been mentioned here today, Oscar Huertes from Peru, I think 1980, a UFO in restricted airspace, an order to open fire. He did, I believe, open fire with his machine cannon, and his testimony, which again, for those who can read English, is available on a website called Coalition for Freedom of Information. Some very interesting first-hand accounts from Parviz Jafari, from Oscar Huertas, Comandante Huertas. He said that when his rounds hit the object, and he was certain that he did hit the object, he said they didn't ricochet off. It was as if they had been absorbed by the object. So these cases of pilots being ordered to open fire are rare, but they have happened. A very famous case, which I'm sure some people here have heard of, is the Bentwaters incident, sometimes known as the Rendlesham Forest incident. December 1980. It's interesting, we always joke in England that most of our most mysterious UFO cases somehow involve the Americans. Americans are always there. I don't know why. So, December 1980, at the two American bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge, strange lights are seen in the forest. And some of the military personnel, who are all security police or law enforcement specialists, they think that perhaps an aircraft has crashed in the forest. There is a forest, Rendlesham Forest, between the two military bases. Thinking that an aircraft has crashed, they go out into the forest to investigate. They find a landed metallic craft. This is very important. This is not lights in the sky. This is something actually on the ground in a small clearing in the forest. Triangular shape,